What else? Yes. Microphone here.
Can you hear me? Yes. We're usually exhorted to be positive, but we seem very easily to be able to go into that default position of negativity.
So true, isn't it?
Is that from a cultural perspective? Is it from a past life?
No, I understand. It's a good point. No, I feel, you know, you could argue that some cultures maybe aren't that way, but I think in general it's the human condition. And certainly that's the Buddha's view, that somehow the unhappy states of mind, the anxiety and the depression and the neediness and the emotional hunger and the jealousy, they might be not so strong in some people, but they loom large. And I think because we can't stand the pain of them, you know, then we do everything in our power to try and find the cause of it to make it all go away. Whereas when things are going well, we don't really notice our good qualities. We sort of take everything for granted, you know. So I think it is not, I don't think it's cultural. I really think it's universal. And certainly that's the Buddhist approach. And because, you know, yeah, I think it's very universal. And that's part of the process, like I'm talking here, part of it is, part of the job that's involved is because the unhappy thoughts are so distressing, and we do anything on earth to make them go away, you know, because basically we can't stand them. And then what we do is we over-identify with them and we think, I am depressed, I am hopeless, I am no good. And that's, I think it's almost as if you could argue, it's not the anxiety and the anger and the jealousy or the depression that are the problem. It's feeling bad about having them and desperately, frantically wishing they would go away and doing anything at all costs. In other words, we can't bear the pain, you know. So part of the process, I can say this with certainty, part of the process of doing this job is that you learn to become courageous, and this is the point now really, you learn to become courageous in the face of what's going on in your own mind, but more and more you're becoming confident that yes, it's there, it looms large, but it's not set in stone. It does not define me. It is not who I really am, and I can change it. So having that confidence changes everything. But that doesn't come naturally, because it feels to us like it is who I really am, you know? And I mean, I think we run to the negativity, and we run to the negativity about ourselves so easily, like we run like a magnet. In other words, it's really obvious. 27 people can tell you you're a nice person. First of all, you don't believe it, even though you're hungry for them to say it again. One person just intimates that you mightn't be so nice. We run like a magnet to that opinion because that's the one we believe. So it's really kind of ironic. The irony of ego in Buddhism is this, that we shouldn't feel bad. We shouldn't feel bad that we've got these things. We should be crying in compassion for ourselves, because this is the stuff that's breaking our hearts. This is the stuff that makes the mess, you know.
Does that come from our parental stuff?
No. Okay, this gets us now to... I'll give you the Buddhist deal on it, okay? Take it or leave it, do what you like. Yeah, the Buddha's view is when you get the big picture view of the universe, as far as Buddha is concerned, it's quite a different trip, you know, from us. And this is very much from the Indians before him, you know. That basically this is why he doesn't assert a creator. He's not being rude or anything, you know, it's just his view. So he would basically say there are these countless, the word they use is sentient being. And the word in Tibetan is very delicious. It's sem chen, and it means mind possessor. Mind in Buddhism, remember, so the Buddha's view is doesn't refer to the brain. He doesn't argue we haven't got a brain. It's just he's got a different take on things. He says our mind is not physical. He uses the word mind and consciousness synonymously. It refers to our, like I said before, our thoughts, our feelings, emotions, unconscious, subconscious, instinct, intuition, this entire spectrum of our inner being. This is our mind. So first, like I said before, this consciousness goes to way more subtle levels, beyond the conceptual, beyond the sensory, which is why we think it's mystical, but it's not for the Buddha. First point. Second point, and this is pretty shocking to us, we are not the handiwork of anybody else. So if you're a Christian or a Muslim, God made you. God puts the soul there, doesn't he, at conception, basically. And that identifies who you are. If you're a materialist, philosophical materialist, and most of us are, even if we have religion, we believe mummy and daddy made us. This goes without saying, doesn't it? It's absolute default assumption. Well, Buddha disagrees. He says, of course they give you a body. He doesn't argue with that. I mean, they worked really hard to get that egg and sperm together, didn't they? You know, there's no doubt about that. But he says they don't give you a mind. That means your love, your kindness, your psychosis, your compassion, you're being good at tennis or football, you're being good at music, you're being happy, you're being sad. They are not given to you by your parents. In fact, the Buddha's view, that's the weirdest idea for the Buddha. So where do they come from is the obvious question. Well, that's his deal about consciousness and mind. That if you sort of, basically the time of conception, if you're a Christian, God puts the soul there. If you're a materialist, mummy and daddy make you, and that's it. But in each case, you could argue, isn't it, you begin in your mummy's womb. There's no past. The past is God, or the past is mummy, daddy, grandma, grandpa, and back to the monkeys, isn't it? That's the point, isn't it? That's the Western view. Not for the Buddha. He says, you're conscious. What's your name? Sherry. So Sherry, she's here now, there's Sherry, and if we track back Sherry's consciousness in this body here, we know we'd see little Sherry, you know, middle-aged Sherry, then young Sherry, then baby Sherry, and you go back and you're back to the first second of conception, basically, and you'd track it back in an unbroken chain of moments. And basically, the egg, the moment before conception, egg came from mummy, sperm from daddy, but Sherry's consciousness, her thoughts, her feelings, her tendencies, all her characteristics, they can be tracked back to a moment before. And then a few weeks before that, her consciousness was in a different body. And this is dealt with it's dealt with an enormous depth in the literature. It's a very fascinating, you know, worldview. And I always, as a kid, wanted some kind of big picture. So for me, I'm, you know, using the Buddhist view these days as my working hypothesis, I like to say. So basically, Sherry and all of us, we come fully programmed into our mummy's womb or her fallopian tube or something, completely programmed with our tendencies. We bring them from before. So without even going into detail here, this is a kind of a shocking concept. Because basically, as the Dalai Lama said, and we're talking about karma now, he says karma's like self-creation. We bring our own stuff. So you can't blame your mother and father, in other words. I mean, my mummy taught me music, okay? She taught me how to sing. So naturally, the logic we have is, well, Robina's good at music because her mummy was good at music. Well, the Buddha's view is, well, my mummy's good at music because she must have brought it with her from before, and I'm good at music because I must have brought it with me from before, and we come together, and then she teaches me, so it activates my music. But essentially, my anger is my anger, and I brought it with me. My love, my kindness, my jealousy. So without going further, even going to detail, the experiential implication of this is really tasty. And I've seen this in my own life, trying to put my money where my mouth is as a Buddhist, that somehow it lessens this sense of you blame your parents. You look back into the past, don't we? Our view in the West is that this is our model. If I've got problems with my hubby, where's my hubby? I don't know, have I got a hubby here? No men, where are the men? Oh, there's one. What's your name? Who? Roy, let's say Roy's my hubby. Let's say, poor Roy. But basically, you know, why are you angry, Robina? Well, Roy's mean to me, you know? It just goes without saying. And then I chuck Roy out and get another one, and then I'm angry with him. And then I chuck him out and get another one. So naturally, I go to my therapist. I'm not being rude here, I'm just talking, you know? Naturally, we will go back into the past, won't we? To look for the events, the things that mummy did, the things that daddy did. You'll check my DNA and my genes and my this and my that. Naturally, because that's our philosophical view, that I am the product of mummy and daddy. So we're sort of looking for a needle in the haystack, aren't we, for the cause of why I choose crummy boyfriends, why, you know, I always get angry with them. So that's our view. Well, the Buddha says it's cool to look back in the past. It will help you, but you're not looking at the main thing. So, you know, why am I angry? Roy's horrible. You ask Buddha, why am I angry, Buddha? Well, Robina, darling, I'm so sorry, you must have been angry yesterday. But why was I angry yesterday? And he'll keep answering that question, because he'll keep answering the same way. You must have a tendency, honey. You've got a habit to be angry. And where did it come from? So he says, don't look in the past. That's only a catalyst, he's saying. It's only a catalyst for my anger. Roy, yes, he's a creep. Sorry, Roy. Do you understand? He is. Buddha would agree. But he says that's not the main issue. That's his problem. Mine is my anger and my jealousy. And this is where it gets really intense, because we're addicted to believing, but it's not my fault. I'm allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to be jealous. I'm not being mean about us. This view is so ingrained in us. This is the view of ego. So the Buddha's view is kind of so simple but really intense. And it's not blame. It brings accountability. It brings courage. And I see this myself, doing my best to work on this stuff, that you learn to own not just your bad qualities, but you really do own and delight in your good qualities. And you learn to not just to take them for granted. Because, you know, it's very kind of curious. You always ask, why do bad things happen? We never ask, why do good things happen? But the Buddha says both are the same. I came programmed with all my own good and my own bad, so I can work with it, that I have the power. So for myself, I find this a very powerful concept, you know, that does bring accountability, and it brings less victim. Just this view alone, you become less of a victim. I didn't ask to get born, did I? It's not my fault. That's how we feel, you know. And we do everything in our power to point the finger somewhere else to kind of get ourselves off the hook. That's just the way ego works. So it's quite intricate, the way the ego mind works, the way Buddhism describes it. It's quite fascinating. So the more and more, you know, I'm just saying myself, trying to work with this view, it brings a sense of owning what you are. You don't put it aside, you don't try to find someone to blame, and this just takes time. But you also own your good stuff, which gives you courage. And then again, because the Buddha's view is fundamental, that this negative stuff, the unhappy stuff, it's real, it's powerful, it looms large, it's the source of our pain, but it is not at the core of our being. And they talk about this in great depth in the Buddhist literature. It is not at the core of our being. They would say that the positive stuff, that's who we really are. So when you take that view on board, it gives you more courage. Then you can live with the garbage because you know it's not permanent. You know you can work with it. Whereas if you really believe it's who you are, of course you want to kill yourself or kill Roy. One or the other, isn't it? This is the Buddha's view anyway, roughly speaking like that. What else, people? Yep. Yes, where? Oh, you next. This lady here too, then.
A little earlier you were saying how...
I like your glasses, darling. They're gorgeous. Yeah. I had a pair like that when I was 17. Go on.
A little earlier you were saying how simple this stuff is. So my question is, why do we all make it so overcomplicated?
Why do we what?
Why do we make it so overcomplicated?
Yeah, because the answer is simple. It's embarrassing. Habit. Habit, darling. And this is not to be taken lightly. It's habit. Look at, you know, like I said, we might not go around raping too many people or jumping on too many little girls, right? And this is, you know, but look at our pathetic old habits like putting too much cake in the mouth. Where are you? I can't see you. You disappeared on me. There you are. Look at our own habits, you know. I mean, like food, isn't it? Maybe for most of us, we're attached to food. You think about it when it's not there. You think you'll have this one. Now you'll have this one. Now you'll go on a diet. Now you'll change this one. I mean, we never stop. So look at our pathetic habits when it comes to putting too much food in the mouth. And we know that it sounds so easy to go on a diet. Oh, that's so easy. I'll change my habit. Look how hard it is. So when we can see that the habit is the reason it's hard, it's not hard in its nature. But some people don't have that habit. I mean, some people just don't get angry. You know, they say, oh, drat, when something wrong goes. I mean, it's like incredible. I can't believe people like that. Do you understand my point? So it really is the answer. And when you take this view, at least philosophically, the Buddhist view, that you don't come into this life as a blank slate. We come fully programmed with whatever we've got, our good and our bad habits. But they're flexible. So I think habit is the answer, and that's why it's so difficult. It's a simple answer, but it's also, the implications kind of profound. But when we see it too, it gives us courage, because we all know, as we say in our language, practice makes perfect. But I love the Tibetan take on it. They say nothing gets more difficult with familiarity. Nothing gets more difficult with practice. That's kind of encouraging, you know. But we all know habits die hard, and we shouldn't have any expectations. Do you understand? So we should be working at it slowly, slowly. But that's the answer, darling. That's the answer. It's more than that, but that's essentially it. Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay.